You can't just give a philosophical answer if somebody is in need of emotional support. The other day I heard a very nice statement by Keshav Maharaj where he said that when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu was killed in the battle, Arjuna was really affected by that. He was really sad about that. And Krishna did not say, "Hey, you're not your body. He's not his body. Come on, let's go on. The show must go on." Krishna allowed Arjuna to grieve, and he had, yeah. So life is often like that. It's a switch between a human approach and a more um, transcendental or absolute approach.
Right, we're on. Hare Krishna again. uh, yeah, I'm excited. I must say, to hear you read your poetry on this platform that I'm trying to create, Kavya Khona. So I've been dreaming about an international poetry circuit. In that note, I shared, and this was inspired
Mm,
by Quiddity Concept Magazine. So like a visibility campaign for Krishna Conscious creative and a preaching effort. I believe I
mm.
shared some copies with you in Vrindavan when we met.
You did, yeah. Well, I think I got one copy, yeah, which I have read, and yeah,
Mm.
really appreciate your attempt to approach or to include arts and creativity to the field. Yeah.
Mm. I found it like really fitting, or I find it really fitting that art has its place, particularly
Mm,
around sharing or exploring spiritual subject matter or conscious subject matter or subject matter that has to do with consciousness. Being that I was inspired by conscious art, particularly in the
mm,
music, and that's how
yeah.
I ultimately started like looking into things deeper than the usual or the obvious, you know.
Mm, mm.
But you shared an homage that you wrote, not necessarily a poem, but something you wrote for,
Yeah,
yeah,
for Srila
for Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to start with a brief introduction of yourself. I'm sure I know who you are as much as and or as far
Mm.
as I know, but I'm thinking maybe a brief introduction would be fitting.
Okay. All right. My name is Padmanabha. Yes, I was born Patrick in the Netherlands 54 years ago, and in my early 30s, I really wanted to explore the world, and mainly I wanted to explore life to see if anywhere else it could be more interesting or more fascinating than I was experiencing in the Netherlands, because I could sense that something was missing despite all the benefits, I could say, of the Netherlands with all its so-called freedom and liberties around, especially around, drugs and alcohol and things like that. And I tried that way of life, and I was quite convinced that it would even lead to a sort of a freedom. But when I clearly experienced that it didn't, I left, and I left for India without that much spiritual awareness or inclination. I spent 5 months in India. Then I anyway ended up in Australia. And finally, in Australia, I had my moment of awakening and came across the devotees in Sydney, Australia, and quickly joined them, and have now been spending the last 21 years in a project, well, in Sydney, Australia, and the last about 16, 17 years in a project called Govinda Valley, which is a yoga education center where we approach the whole of Krishna consciousness from the yoga system rather than from a religious and ritualistic uh, direction or perspective. Yeah, so That's in a nutshell, I guess, me.
You also have like a very seasoned palate when it comes to musical choices. Yeah.
Somehow, I have such an open mind that when I go looking back at my music taste, and still to this day, like I can listen to hip hop or rap, and then 2 minutes later, I can listen to something classical or something very noisy. And yeah, and the same. I have the same like in life. I like contrast. I like juxtapositions. I like when I cook. I like that it's something is sweet and something is bitter, and they are both in the same meal. Or when I make other decorations, it's always about sort of opposing colors or opposing elements.
Speaking about cooking, you've been involved in the restaurant industry at some point?
I cook at our retreat center at a Govinda Valley place. I cook 4 days a week, and we used to have a cafe as well in Sydney. Unfortunately, we had to close that after COVID. It didn't work anymore. There was not enough sales, and yeah, had to close it. But yeah, I've always been involved in hospitality, and I think it's one of my ways of serving is to create an ambience, an atmosphere for people to feel safe in and to feel productive in. So yeah, that's one thing I do and within the valley as well to make sure that there is a that the how do you say the field is pleasant and the field is easy to work in.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's always cool to have that kind of atmosphere. You just get into
Mm.
yourself as a person, yeah, as a spiritual seeker.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay, yeah, we'll just hop into a reading. I'll just switch our screen around so that you can get into it.
So
And
I'll
yeah,
read the homage.
yes, you just can read it.
Kianatimuran Shakanantina Salakia Chaksurin Nikamtina Tasma Sheetu Venha. Dear Srila Prabhupada, years ago the singer Sting wrote a song called Fragile. You may not know that song, but as the title suggests, it's about how fragile and vulnerable we are. It has always surprised me how we take so much risk despite being so fragile. It's so easy to break a leg or a heart. Still, we go about life so carelessly and recklessly. From you, we learn that this is the power of Maya, of illusion, making us feel invincible, like we can do anything despite so many limitations. Also, in your society, we see how fragile we are, being human on the transcendental path. Devotees may fall down, become discouraged, even dismayed. We hear of abuse. How to deal with this seems a complex thing. We take the stand of the Absolute as you presented it so well. But do we consider the individual as you showed us so well too? Do we consider gender, body, and age, even though we know we are not this body? All of this doesn't seem easy to deal with. Opinions differ and are often diametrically opposed. Devotees feel unsafe while others find more shelter. We know shelter is there in you, in Radha and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Your teachings tell it all as it is. Everything can be reconciled in Guru, Sadhu, and Sastra, though a consideration of our humanity and our tendency to fall should also be there. Do we always keep the absolute perspective, or do we recognize how fragile we are as an organization as well? You said your movement is based on love and trust, and you also said it could only be destroyed from the inside. We pray for your guidance and your loving and kind support, your unfailing trust in Sastra, the acharyas, and your ability to apply it. We pray to come to the Abadi platform, though fragile in our material form, fearless in the absolute. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for showing us by example how to reconcile also all apparent contradictions, how to love and care for each other and be detached as well. For us to follow properly will be the next big thing. The servants at Govinda Valley Retreat. So this was a Vyasa Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada around 2 years ago.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that. It's very sobering. It draws one into their heart, and yeah, inspires quite a bit. And talking about inspiring quite a bit, I'll just roll on to our first question. The fragility of human life. In your homage, you think about how fragile human life is and how easily our hearts or bodies can break. How has this realization affected your spiritual journey? And how do you connect this fragility with Krishna consciousness when knowing the truth leads to fearlessness?
Yeah, in many ways, that realization has made it more real because, like I also say in how much we are humans on the transcendental path. We are in a human body, and the human body, as we know, is very fragile. It can go wrong so many ways. So we are soul, but we have a body with all its limitations. And if we don't look at those limitations, if we don't take these into consideration, we might end up talking all kind of transcendental and far out spiritual language without a real realization of where we are at. And that might lead to embarrassment or sort of a phoniness that people can see through. You might be talking the talk, but you're not really there in your present human condition. So people don't find that so attractive. Maybe in the beginning you can impress them with far out sort of language and statements, but when they see that you are not there as a human, they they switch off, I would say. So for me to be with my human shortcomings and character defects and all kind of things, and to experience myself in a limited kind of way within that framework of unlimited truth, I find it very interesting and very fascinating. And also to be there for other people when they discover that, yeah, we might be dealing here with the truth, the absolute truth, but we are very limited in our own ability to understand that, to work with that, and we're confronted so often with our limitations. So even though the absolute truth is makes us fearless, on the path there's a lot of anxieties to go through. Yeah.
I usually play you audiobooks just before going to bed. Uh,
Mm,
that site that Maharaj shared, forgot the name of the site, but a whole lot of audiobooks there, Bhagavatam, you name it, teachings of Lord
mm,
Chaitanya. Sort of like not a dramatic reading, but just droned as it is. And
mm,
half the time I fall asleep listening to those books, and I'll tell you, 100% of the time I wake up to a very sobering point in Prabhupada's purport,
mm,
and it's always hard hitting.
mm,
So just if not a night ago, I was just saying to my wife Manu, uh, she heard the same thing as well, where Prabhupada is like talking about these really high standards, what a true spiritualist should be,
mm,
qualities of said spiritual practitioners and all of that. And we were just saying, so then that means that point kind of qualifies a fall down or whatever mishap or unfortunate situation. And I was like, no, the realization that I had is that you have to understand that you can't fake your way through it in a
mm,
sense. You know,
yeah,
that standard is something that you should aspire or grow towards. That's like a goal. That's
mm,
like that's the bar. So
mm,
yeah, like I kind of I get that. Yeah, you have to be relatable. You can't just be this walk on water type personality. Whereas you got a
mm,
whole mechanical system at the bottom where people can't see. Yeah.
mm.
Talking about mechanical system, the power of Maya. You mentioned that Maya makes us feel invincible despite our limitations. Can you share a specific experience or realization in your life that brought you face to face with this illusion, and how did Srila Prabhupada's teachings guide you through it?
Yeah, I think one very clear one that we are often confronted with is that, we hear and we know that we are not our body and others are also not their body, yet we can become so fascinated with others' bodies. And we sometimes might feel even sad that they're also not their body,
Mm.
you know? So
Mm.
it can be, yeah, of course, there is the human bodies that we see in the street, and we have to tell ourselves sometimes that the body is just a vehicle. Yeah, we might be fascinated by it, just like we might be fascinated by a car, but that's not the actual person. So, um, and in other ways as well. I mean, when I saw that question, I remembered as a teenager doing quite silly things. One thing I remember is lighting fireworks and holding it in my hand and
Mm.
then throwing it into the air just before it would explode.
Mm.
Now, how much more of an invincibility do you need to get? Like if there's just been a second later, then it could have blown my hand off. Lucky that did not happen. Thinking back, you realize how much Maya, material life makes us think like you can do anything, and
Mm.
it's just simply not true. Um, I do Sankirtan service, and I notice there that if I am surrendered and if I'm connected with Krishna and allow Krishna to guide me, then there is a sense of invincibility there, meaning that the direction and guidance I get is of a far higher standard, you might say, far more transcendental level than if I'm just doing it by my own self will and by my own capacity of our intelligence. Um, but when I not don't, when I'm not surrendered, when I'm in a relatively mundane consciousness, then all these privileges are not there. So then I need to apply the chanting and the principles of surrender, and I need to allow Krishna to come true rather than me trying to show or prove.
Mm.
So,
Um, yeah, it's kind of been a resonating theme throughout the week. Surrender. You
mm,
know, like just I've been trying to reach out to a lot of young devotees, particularly creatives. Just
mm,
who are using their creative aptitudes or inclinations to spread or explore Krishna consciousness in a way that is relatable to, you could say,
mm,
the people on the street, Sankirtan in a sense.
mm-hmm,
And yeah, most of the devotees are like, what we're trying to do is basically surrender and let Krishna come through. You know, like,
mm,
okay, fine, I can play the guitar. I have that karma, or I have that inclination. Or I can do this, or I can write that, or try and make this sound good. But surrender ultimately to let the Supreme Personality of Godhead lead, or the Super Soul
Mm,
lead, and then the realizations become deep, or the effort itself becomes extra deep, and the
mm,
realizations thereafter are like so sweet and
mm,
purifying at the same time. Devamrita Maharaj
sure.
said the word purifying sounds heavy, but purification is exactly what we need
Mm,
if you're going to overcome this very thick magic show, and it's very trippy. This reality, it's quite trippy. Sometimes I catch myself either driving or just people watching, and
mm.
then it's like, oh, hectic, this is so amazing. This is like,
It's
and
a good show, right?
it's thick. Yeah, it's such a
It's
good
a good
show.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I actually wrote a poem that um kind of explores that. I remember Maharaj at the Durban Rath Yatra, one Rath Yatra. I thought he was giving a class, and I was reciting this poem. And when I brought my eyes up, he was at the door. He was watching.
Right,
The
right.
first verse, or the first line is like, "Where have you gone? Watching consciously as the deep details of delirium take to your effect. A scene of nature's dense reality happening right before you." Right? And the thing about Maya, or this situation, that's another book that I was reading. Purushottam Maharaj, is Maya, the energy, or the divine energy of the Supreme Personality. And I was like, this is so thick and so
Mm.
well put together. It's like there's no fault in it, if you were to try and find the split in the veil.
It's not like Microsoft betrayals,
Mm.
like my laptop did this morning. No, it's
Uh,
true. Like and sometimes as devotees, we speak about the material energy and Maya as something sort of clunky and something that is, yeah, it's difficult to overcome apparently, but well, I can see true if our ego makes us think that we've kind of like nailed it, or we can handle it. Um, we have no idea, first of all, how deep we're in that fog, or how deep we are in the illusion. And, talk about not artificial intelligence, but like original intelligence. It is so intelligently put together, and it operates in such a dynamic way that even when we think that we have approached anything through escaping Maya or something like that, it just comes up a way of dealing with us, which we so left field or so
Mm,
original. I said, wow.
mm,
So yeah, and obviously it is Krishna's energy. So why would it in any way be limited or
mm.
clunky or anything like that? That's just
And
us thinking. Mm,
yeah, the other beautiful thing about it is that a flip or a switch in consciousness, um, accepting it purificatorily speaking, where you're
mm,
like, oh, it's Krishna's mercy, then it kind of works. You can cope with it.
mm,
I find that
yes.
I'm able to deal with it a bit better. You know,
Mm,
yeah,
true.
because some, like you're saying, left field, some really heartbreaking things. Some like,
Mm.
what on earth is this? you know,
Krishna doesn't shy away from a bit of drama.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. So, balancing the absolute and the relative. The homage explores the tension between holding absolute principles and addressing individual needs and humanity. How do you personally approach this balance in your interactions with others, and what lessons from Srila Prabhupada inspire your perspective?
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada, as we know, he wrote quite heavy statements in his books. For example, if we look at what he wrote about women, would often be, it is often quite strong and heavy. Yet when we look at him in a practical sense, how he dealt with his disciples, including the women, you could see that he looked at his devotees, at his disciples with an equal vision, and if they had the capacity to execute a particular task or take a particular responsibility, it didn't matter to him whether they were male or female. There's quite some examples where he engaged Vishaka or Yamuna in tasks or responsibilities that were equal to those of the men that he was asking of them. So he was not stereotypical that these are the women and therefore they are this or that. So yeah, in the same way, I try to look at people that I meet or that I work with, deal with in a similar way, where I try to see their capacity, their interest, and work with them in that particular way. And it doesn't matter whether what gender they are, where they come from, who they are. And the same as with sometimes in a relationship, like like when you're with your wife, and so you you have to switch between a human approach and sometimes a philosophical approach. You can't just give a philosophical answer if somebody is in need of emotional support. The other day, I heard a very nice statement by Keshav Maharaj where he said that when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu was killed in the battle, Arjuna was really affected by that. He was really sad about that. And Krishna did not say, "Hey, you're not your body. He's not his body. Come on, let's go on. The show must go on." Krishna allowed Arjuna to grieve, and he had, yeah. So life is often like that. It's a switch between a human approach and a more um, transcendental or absolute approach.
That that kind of goes back to sorry, our first question and what we're talking about as well. How to navigate through, you could say, the what now
Journey,
popular,
yeah.
popularly known as the journey, but
Mm.
popularly now known as the simulation.
Right.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember I used to lock myself when I was in university. I'd lock myself in my room. I wasn't very sociable, but just play PlayStation. That was my thing. I would just be on the PlayStation, and at the time, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was the thing, on the
Okay.
PlayStation 2, and I was just living in that thing.
Right.
I
Right.
knew I knew the cities, I knew the roads, I knew where to get whatever, like. So and then I'd even forget to eat until the
Right.
character got hungry. That's how terrible it was.
Wow. Wow.
Right? But
Amazing.
then
Yeah.
later, later then I realized, like, yeah, um, this is the human body, or the kind of material body you're awarded, affords you access into a particular experience in this reality, and the illusion is in the temporal nature of the thing. It's not that
Mm.
it's fake. It's
Mm.
very
Mm.
real. You're going through it. You're going through it. So
Mm.
how knowing how to navigate that, between the hard hitting philosophical facts
Mm.
and having the emotional intelligence to translate those facts
Mm.
into something relatable, and not chase people away. I remember speaking about the bodily concept of life and some of these statements. Another point I woke up to, I think it was ninth canto, where the churning the body of I forgot the Maharaj's name, but in the dynasty of of hectic. My mind switches off when I'm trying to be intelligent and say cool things, like yeah. But Priyavrata Maharaj, yeah. So
Okay.
it was just exploring that, and then the churning of his body, which leads to another conversation. But from the first personality who came out from that whole exercise was a black person, a person who was like black, like
Mm.
you know, and the description of the that personality or their inclination was that they were thieves and they were basically bad qualities. And it kind of hit again in right on the note of a memory where some of the devotees here in South Africa kind of gave up on Krishna consciousness, leading on certain points like that, African bodied
Mm.
devotees.
Mm.
And they, it hurt coming from
Mm.
also a painful heritage, the history of
Mm-hmm.
South Africa, Southern Africa, basically the African diaspora and such. So then how do you navigate that, the intelligence that you then equip yourself with, which requires a large amount of surrender at
Mm.
that and faith in Srila Prabhupada? And I was thinking, this year it's 50 years since Srila Prabhupada came into South Africa. What has changed really? And what does that mean for me? And what does that
Mm.
mean for the African community? Things like that, And I was thinking, okay, this is the machine. I
Mm.
have I have like such a limited knowledge of what the machine is, and this far out stuff, churning a dead body in order to sire progeny. Sounds like a
Mm.
genetic experiment, cloning or something. But,
Mm.
but yeah, so I was like, what is a nishada? What is this human body, the karma that I have to be in this
Mm.
African body? And was that black person actually an African? And if Prabhupada didn't care about Africans, why did he bother coming here?
Mm.
Those
Mm.
kind of
Sure.
questions, just asking myself. And then you start realizing and going deeper into interacting with Srila Prabhupada that these statements are not necessarily isolated and
Mm.
insensitive. You
Mm.
know, they are pockets of realizations and revelations that are attached to a whole
Yes.
reality that is
Mm.
inclusive. Yeah.
Bhakti Tirtha Swami once went to Srila
Mm,
Prabhupada and said, he kind of complained, Prabhupada, they are discriminating against me because I'm black. And Prabhupada just kind of looked at him and then he said, what should I do? And Prabhupada asked him, like, do you think you're black?
mm,
And if you do, then that's what you got to give up. You're not black, white, this, that. You're not American. You're not.
mm,
So he was hoping, of course, that Prabhupada would say, like, "Oh, bring them to me. I will chastise them."
mm,
Uh, but Prabhupada didn't respond to that. I'm not sure what came after that, but he responded to him about, like, what do you think? Do you also think you're black? And if you
mm,
do, and he had the same with his women sometimes, that with his female disciples when they would complain. But as long as you think you're a woman, and there's something there's something wrong there, you're not. And he was not insensitive, like we have been discussing. He was not insensitive, and he also expressed this upset and surprise when uh, his disciples showed insensitivity towards each other. So he was not just making philosophical statements like "you're not a woman, you're not black." He did include that in his replies, but there's also many examples where he would um, come back to the actual human situation and make a correction there. Or
mm.
also told someone to change a particular whatever it would be. So yeah, both things have to be there.
Yeah, time, place, and circumstance is always important, and also transcend
Mm,
bodily concept of life. Because I remember I tried to host a poetry reading or a poetry session in Botswana at the temple. I called it the temple top poetry sessions, and the idea was, to have a introductory class, prasadam,
mm,
cooking classes, and then they have a beautiful room on the roof. It has like, it's sort of like the acoustics of the room. They have a delayed effect and a kind of reverby, kind of
okay.
warm sound. So I was like, it
Mm,
would be cool to have poetry readings up here. So I
yeah.
invited a whole lot of people who knew nothing about Krishna consciousness, and the theme was, what is the soul? Who is the soul? What is the soul? And what does the soul do? And in the class, um, it went into, the denominations 400 within the 8.4 million. Then uh the point four is the humans, and in the humans they like this and like that. And
Mm,
I could just see this one girl. She was a journalist, and she was like power to the people kind of person. And I could just see the
yeah.
turning in her head, and she's like, she just outright, she was upset. She's like, so who are these non-intelligent people you're talking about? Who are you saying is non-intelligent or less intelligent?
Right,
Uh,
right.
He said, circumstance is really important. So yeah, you have to really know how to apply the butter, as it were. Not,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
So writing as a medium for no, reflections on love and
reflection.
trust.
Mm,
Yes, our fourth question. Uh, you referenced Srila Prabhupada's statement that his movement is based on love and trust. How do you think we as individuals and a community can foster deeper love and trust while acknowledging the challenges and fragility of our situation in material nature?
yeah, it's very complex, I would say. Like well, first of all, we have to recognize that everyone is different, truly different. So at first we see, for example, there's a distinction between male and female, and so you have the males and you have the females. But then if you look at every male, you will see vast differences in their convictions and their way they do life. And then you look at every female, and there's vast differences between the females. Yes, there's many similarities as well. As we know, we're one and different at the same time, and it's inconceivable. It truly is inconceivable. The oneness is kind of inconceivable, and the differences are how big they can be. And we have to be willing to see the differences between us. And we also have to see that there is a level of that inconceivability there, and a sort of a mysteriousness around it. Like we might read a story in the Bhagavatam or Krishna book that's far out, and it has all these far out things in it. But then we interact with our friends or with our wife, and we might just sort of judge them in a very simplistic way. She's just a woman, or he's just that kind of guy, and or men are like this, and then we don't allow the individual to surprise us. We don't allow life to surprise us. We just think in dogmatic or stereotypical kind of ways. So in short, we need to truly see the individual. On the other hand, we also need to look at the collective. We are a collective. We are an organization. We are a group. So that also requires particular ways of being and policies and culture and things like that. If we're too much on the individual, then we're not a group anymore. If we're only a group, which is this group, then you quickly become a cult, which with all kind of dynamics that are not inspiring for the individual or don't take the individual into consideration. So it's complex, but at the same time, that's life. And like you said before, like Maya is complex, or complex as in like there's a lot of variegatedness there that we need to take into consideration. But as we do, I think life becomes richer and becomes more surprising and more honorable and enjoyable. Like what's more enjoyable than getting to know someone and giving up your preconceptions that you had about that person? Like when I got to know my wife, I still get to know her. And sometimes it's just very surprising, like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that you think like that or that you are like that. Um, but we have to be willing to give up our preconceived ideas about that we have about who we think people are or who we are ourselves. So, and that I think will lead to more love and trust, but it requires that the organization, as well as the individuals of the organization, are willing to set aside their preconceived ideas that they have. Which is challenging. Mm, yeah.
Yeah, love and trust sounds like a nice spice for growth,
Mm,
right?
yeah. We need it.
Yeah, I had a realization about that recently. Uh, Relationship wise, my wife and I realized that, yeah, when you hold on to certain preconceived notions or kind of, oh, this is who this person is and this
Mm,
is how they've reacted before,
mm,
or this is what they've shared, therefore they must be like this, forgetting
mm,
that this living entity is like a dynamic kind of, I mean, quantitatively speaking, different from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but qualitatively the same, right?
mm,
And
mm,
and if Krishna is this mind-boggling personality who is like
mm,
so far out, then
mm,
what to speak of this sample of his divinity, that's right
mm.
before you. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And we have the
Um,
choice every day or every moment to act and see on our conditioned in our conditioned way, or to act and see really what's happening and acknowledge it for what it is.
mm,
And sometimes it can be challenging, like you know, sometimes a response of someone can be very challenging, but why not? Why not appreciate that as well? And why not acknowledge it? Hey,
mhm. Yeah, you were saying about sometimes you also have to accept the difficult parts of a person.
of course, yeah, and of ourselves. And
Mm,
what I find, for example, very interesting in the relationship with my wife is we often explore that. We often explore like the challenges that she goes through, or I go through, that we go through as a couple with each other. And yeah, you notice that with the right language and the right approach, you can discuss more or less anything,
mm,
which is very nurturing and very enlivening. And
mm,
yeah, that also takes you away from this idea that life and love always needs to be like a sort of a Disney version where everything is just glitter. I mean, even Disney movies are not all glitter it often takes a long time for a character to reach a certain level or a certain thing. So in the same way, I noticed that my appreciation for someone can grow if I have if there's a communication about it, if there's an understanding about it. So then, whether it's you know, an immediately enjoyable aspect, or whether it's a difficult aspect, a challenging aspect, it doesn't really matter so much anymore. You can just accept it all and nurture, appreciate, just appreciate it as it is, rather as we have it to be. Is it saying that to accept life on life terms?
I was saying to one devotee here at the center, one of the devotees that we've been preaching to, he says he wants to get married. And I was like, are you ready to get purified? Because I was listening to the expectations, not to discourage him. I think the Grihastha Ashram is a very empowering space. I was like, you have to be willing to surrender your false ego. You have to in real time. Like
In real time, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fifth question: writing as a medium for realization. This homage is beautifully crafted. Is a beautiful. It's sorry, Prabhu. This homage is a beautifully crafted piece of writing. What role does writing play in your process of realizing and expressing Krishna conscious truths? And how did this particular piece come into being?
Yeah, thank you for the compliment.
Mhm.
I thought it was a fairly sort of stream of consciousness or stream of thought written piece, which I like. I like language very much. I like street kind of language where you express something in fairly, not necessarily simple words, but in a fairly direct and straightforward way. I don't like pompous language so much. I mean, sometimes I can read it, but I don't like it so much for myself. More like tell it like it is kind of thing. I've always used a freestyle or stream of consciousness type of writing to see where I'm at. So also before I met the devotees, I would often just write whatever comes up, and don't judge it. And yeah, in the same way I do now, I might take a notebook and write down the realization that I have, and then I notice, and 3 days later, when if I give a class or if I'm talking with some of the students at our retreat, that I use that example that I just wrote down, because writing something down, of course, brings it into a fairly concrete kind of you say block of information, something like that, chunk. It's defined, in other words. So then I can give that information again to someone else. Maybe not literally. I'll say it a little bit different according to who I'm talking to or the circumstance, but it's more or less that realization again. Sometimes I notice that I might use a particular realization 5 times in one day in different circumstances or different situations. So because I'm a fairly free flow kind of person, I can start to ramble and I can start to segue into all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Yet uh, it helps me to anchor myself when I write down realizations, when I put them into a framework or so. And how this particular piece came about, well, it started being asked to write a homage to Srila Prabhupada. So then you start walking around and thinking, what am I going to write about? What am I going to do this year? And somehow this song came up, and seeing so often in life, whether it's in with devotees or not devotees on Sankirtan, you see so often how vulnerable we are, how fragile we are. And like I start that homage with it, it surprises me how we have this bravado in life. We think we're invincible. The way we drive, the way we go about in life is so um, as if nothing can happen to us. Yet we see all the time that so much can go wrong. We can fall. Somebody can punch us or stop us, or it's so everything is just so fragile and vulnerable. Um, so I wanted to use that theme in my homage, and basically just sat down one day on Sankirtan and just wrote it down in 20 minutes or so. And yeah, I still see it, even though it's a couple of years ago. I still see it very often. We in some groups there's a saying or a motto like "lead with your weakness," and use your apparent weaknesses or difficulties or challenges in life as your strength. Of course, in a lot of conscious music and art, that the same will be done. And it's inspiring. It's inspiring when someone can can be vulnerable and can be fragile, yet be strong. And so that, yeah, I find that personally a very important topic. I see much more often also that humans, for example, they are limited in their capacity because of the vulnerabilities and the challenges and the fragility they have as humans. Not so much if whether they have a degree or not. There's so many people who have university degrees, yet they can't achieve anything in life because of this difficulty they experience as humans. And the same with devotees. Devotees leave. Devotees feel very disappointed with the movement, with their guru. All kind of tragic things happen like that, and it's much more often because of the human lack of attention or mistreatment or abuse, rather than rarely somebody leaves because the philosophy just doesn't do it for them. Usually Krishna is still somewhere in their heart or in their life, but they just can't handle the human challenges. So that's why I decided to put that to make a homage around that. Mm.
That's some really hard hitting stuff. Yeah, because I'm thinking about vulnerability and how it's been whacked and tied up,
Mm.
tossed out the window half the time, particularly when
Mm-hmm.
in circles where being macho is the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and not
For
looking at
sure.
how fragile it is.
That's
But
right.
I came across a quote that kind of resonates with or mirrors what you just shared: to lead with your weakness or lead through your weakness. That
Mm.
vulnerability is a superpower.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, yeah, actually, yeah, vulnerability is a superpower because there's compassion, there's relatability, there's all of that,
Mm.
and through that, then you can access you could say, that spiritual thread, that
Mm-hmm.
that reality, and then you can also touch people through vulnerability, touch them where it matters.
Well, the
Because
whole
how
concept of surrender is based on vulnerability. Krishna is asking us to surrender onto Him, to
Mm,
depend on Him, and what more vulnerable can be there, really. Lucky, of course. it works, and Krishna has the capacity to lead us in ways we couldn't even imagine.
Mm.
But that's, we are like the child depending on their mother, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, but it's really difficult to access that sensitivity, or that
Mm,
sensibility. I've realized like a lot of
yeah.
people are afraid to be vulnerable. I mean, coming from
Mm-hmm.
really cold places and
Mm,
being bullied, trauma, a whole lot of things.
mm-hmm.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
that was one part of a conversation around discussing what it means to take up this project, this WUSA project, and what
Mm,
we're looking into, what we're dealing with, the traumatic heritage of the people that we're trying to access. So the
mm-hmm.
sensitivities around, engaging in that way, or engaging in the activity of sharing Krishna consciousness. So as much as vulnerability is a superpower, sometimes the suit doesn't fit. Sometimes the suit doesn't fit. You gotta tailor it first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's something that is really needed. Yeah. It's so
Mm,
it's a very important spiritual technology. Mm.
mm.
Um Contradictions and reconciliation. In the homage, you highlight how Srila Prabhupada reconciled apparent contradictions with compassion and detachment. Can you share an example from your own life or observations where you witnessed such reconciliation, either in Srila Prabhupada's actions or in your own practice?
Yeah, like I said already, like Srila Prabhupada dealt in very personal ways
Mm,
um, with his disciples, which I find very inspiring. And also, our whole philosophy is full of contradictions, really. Like, Krishna and Balaram, they have contradicting opinions about things. And they're both called the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
mm.
How does that work? When the Bell of Good, etc. was on, Krishna was all for it, and Balaram went on a pilgrimage because he didn't want to have anything to do with it. The what do you call it? The antagonist was one of his friends. So it's really like inconceivability is just so much part of life, and yet we try to put life in such boxes and rules and regulations, and we try to we try to rationalize life in such huge ways, which of course is needed because we need a construct and a framework to live in. If everything was just completely free flowing, then it would just be too bizarre to to live in. So we have all these kind of anchors in life that we can hold on to. Yet within that, there's a lot of nuances and juxtapositions and inconceivability and mystery. Yeah, personally, I find that we need to include that much more in the way we do life. We need to accept it, that life has all these aspects to it and embrace them and work with them in creative ways in our relationships and in every aspect of life. Um, so for me, for me as a person, it's also becoming more clear that that's just the way I do life. I do life in a I don't like to label it artistic, but I guess it is kind of artistic or creative sort of way where I just try to work and be within that flow of life where interaction takes place and it's like you sort of bounce off the situation that you're in and you observe what the situation is giving you and then you respond to that. And whether or not that has contradiction in it and um, yeah, like we said before, when Arjuna's son died, Krishna could let him be there. He didn't. he didn't like repeat the lesson from Bhagavad Gita that he had given like days before. So there's always that need for sensitivity and for I guess recognizing what the situation is asking of us. So I personally, I must say that the more I sort of embrace that, I recognize that within myself, the more rich and valuable life becomes for me. The more opportunities I see for contributing.
I really appreciate that. I was just thinking as you're speaking that, my mom used to say, a place for everything and everything in its place. This is now just thinking back to, the contradictions that we're dealing with, and particularly around, Krishna and Balaram. Balaram, he went his own way. He went on a
The
what you call it?
pilgrimage,
A
like a
pilgrimage. Yeah,
pilgrimage. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, you went. But I was thinking, but that also kind of gives somebody who may be having reservations or difficulty in engaging in a battle a choice. You can go with Balaram. Go with Balaram on the pilgrimage. you know, yeah. Don't. You have a place. You have somewhere to go. You have something.
True,
There's a
true.
place for everyone.
Mm.
Our seventh and last question, inspiration for fearlessness. The homage concludes with a prayer for becoming fearless. Abai, despite material fragility. What does fearlessness mean to you in the context of Krishna consciousness, and how do you cultivate this quality in your spiritual life?
Well, again, it comes down to surrender and allowing Krishna to give me the guidance and direction. I notice it most strongly in Sankirtan. Like when I do Sankirtan, I go into areas and places where I don't have the explicit permission to be in. So I kind of go as a sort of a James Bond into all kind of events and places. And of course, it's relatively innocent and safe, especially in a country like Australia, where they just sort of ask you to leave and not do what you're doing if they see you. But still, it's a bit of a sport to try and do this activity without disturbing people and without also being discovered, so to say. And I personally enjoy that interaction between myself and the field that I'm in, literally. But to enjoy Krishna's direction and guidance, which is very present, and every Sankirtan devotee can probably confirm that Krishna's intelligence is there. Um, if I allow that, if I surrender, if I'm in the right consciousness, I'm in the right mood, then Krishna will just guide me and will make me avoid approaching the people that are part of the organization of the event that I'm in, or something like that. And it's just very clear that is actually what's happening, as if you have a personal bodyguard with you which is showing you the way and is protecting you. So that I think personally that's a very big benefit of a Sankirtan service, whatever form that takes, because you're interacting with the public in public places, yet you can do it on a purely transcendental basis, and you can be in this guided consciousness where you're just kind of interacting with people in a very casual and sort of common kind of way. And experiencing that, then it gives me that kind of hope and dream, perhaps, that this can go on forever and this can just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then thinking of someone like Srila Prabhupada, who would have been constantly operating on this level. And that Krishna consciousness, that's what it means to be Krishna conscious, right? To be always aware of Krishna. Or if we look at our Guru Maharaj, how he was so able to transcend his physical body, his human side, and just give of himself. That was impossible without Krishna's hand. Yeah, I mean, we've all clearly witnessed that. So that's very inspiring that this actually really works. Maybe for us, or for me at least, it only works like, you know, an amount of minutes a day. It's definitely not there throughout my day all the time, that's for sure. But when I experience it, it's like, that's what I'm looking for. And that can increase and grow unlimitedly. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about it in terms of what is popularly or commonly known as intuition. You know,
Mm,
how that little voice, or do this, don't go there, or
mm,
like that. It's actually the super soul. You know,
mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm,
I've been thinking about being in that constant state, because half the time creativity relies on intuition. You know,
mm-hmm,
and, we were just saying with Chitraleka a week ago or a couple of days ago that the elements are there, the recipe is there, but
mm,
you can just be creative with it. The dish may
mm,
be the dish as it is, but the flavors may be different because you applied your creative aptitude or your creative nature in a sense, maybe introduced a different spice altogether. But
mm,
listening to the super soul, that's something that I've been trying to do more of
mm,
recently. You
mm,
know, because I started feeling a little overwhelmed. So much to do, writing,
mm,
maybe getting back into making music. The next issue of Quiddity, which is what I have at the
mm.
back there, and I got a bit overwhelmed. So I was like, and then I just heard a little voice, you know, like, do this, or go relax, go take a nap, or
Mm,
or
mm,
something like, you know, what if you tried it like that? No, green will work better, you know, things like that.
mm,
And
mm,
this word, or leave it alone for a minute, go for a
mm.
walk. And I'm like, that actually works, you know. Listen to the super soul, follow your intuition. And I found that
Yeah.
making, being creative in that sense, you find the most beautiful of things. um
Mm,
mm, One devotee in Latin America, I was just talking to him as well. He was like, he was dealing with cancer actually. um Jorge Luis Martin, that's his Karmi name, but
okay.
his initiated name, I forgot, but his Karmi name stayed in my mind.
Mm-hmm,
Produced really amazing interpretations of devotional music, and translating it into Spanish as well, intuitively.
mm-hmm,
As
mm.
it sounds mystical. Just following your intuition is a very mystical exercise, you know. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's quite powerful in Krishna consciousness, and in attaching it to how you're saying, yeah, surrendering and following through. And in that way, you're always with Krishna, and then you realize it when you follow it, you know.
The
Mm.
other day, I parked in an area of Sydney where I was going to do Sankirtan, and I started, and something told me go the other way, and I was thinking, I don't, I don't really want to because this area is usually pretty good. I don't
Mm.
really. But hold on a second. It feels a bit like divine kind of guidance, and
Mm.
it's difficult to discern. Like, is this my mind? Is this But my mind actually said, no, stay here because it's always good here. It's quite cool here. But I listened to the whatever intuition was there, and I literally walked the other direction. And then again, I got a feeling I should go to this particular suburb in Sydney. And it happened to be, I did follow again, and I came to this suburb, and it happened to be that there had been a sport event that same day, and all the spectators of that sport event were all there kind of celebrating, and it was a very fruitful field for me to do Sankirtan in. And I would have not gotten there if I would have just followed my own mind, which was telling me like, no, here's where we parked, here's where we went.
Familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity, things like that. And so it confirms also that, Krishna is there with me, and he is kind of interested in the way I like to do Sankirtan, and he sort of endorses that. Okay, you want to do it like this? Fine, I'll give you the best spot there is today, or I'll give you the best facility for that. Sometimes he might also teach me a lesson if I'm too much in my sort of ego, then he might sort of, smash me in a way, smash my ego. That's also there. But again, it's just this creative, intuitive interaction between us and our environment. And from the environment, also very useful. Krishna often speaks to other people. He makes us see things about ourselves, or he makes us see things about something we are dealing with through another person. That other person has no idea that they're being engaged by the Supreme Lord in our purification, or in our benefit. But it does work like that, and we can kind of recognize it if we become sensitive to it. We become recognized that this was a Krishna moment. I think Raghunath and Kastuba, they call it Krishna magic. So when Krishna, of course, he does that sort of all the time in our life. We just don't always see it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu, for coming and sharing this very vulnerable piece of writing. And I've had like a few deep realizations and affirmations around certain thinkings, if there's such a word, thoughts and feelings. Yeah. Are you on Instagram? I haven't seen you on Instagram. I see you mostly on Facebook.
Yeah, no, I do Facebook more or less exclusively.
That's another thing that I've been thinking about. Yeah, I've been thinking about social media a lot, like accessing the internet only when I need to. But it's a tricky thing, this internet thing. Yeah.
I mean, I have an Instagram account, but I hardly ever use it. I don't want to get sucked in further into the vortex.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be weighted.
So I just put my things on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get sucked in. You have to be weighted. You have to have a whole lot of weights in your pockets. Well, so that hurricane will
just...
Yeah. All right, thank you again, Prabhu. I'll just end our recording here.
Okay.